Welcome to the Westcliff University podcast, where we explore revolutionary ideas that force us to rethink life, creativity, humanity, and the future. Today, I have the privilege of interviewing Kirby Ferguson, a very special filmmaker and writer who's pretty much blown up the whole idea that anything is truly original. And as a result, he's been making us rethink culture, technology, and originality ever since. But before we get to meet Kirby, if you want to learn about Westcliff University, including our incredible undergraduate athletic program, visit westcliff.edu. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, YouTube, and Xia Hongshu, the Little Red Book. I'm Dr. Barry Sandrew, your host on this journey. The opinions you hear in this podcast are mine and my guests. They don't necessarily reflect the views of Westcliff University. We're here to explore ideas, not represent official positions. Now let's get into it. Kirby Ferguson is a writer, filmmaker, and cultural critic, best known for his groundbreaking documentary series, Everything is a Remix. That documentary reframed how we think about creativity. Copy, transform, combine. That's the blueprint. Pablo Picasso said that good artists borrow, great artists steal. Steve Jobs took that quote and added, "We have always been shameless about stealing great ideas." And that was in reference to all the ideas that he stole from Xerox, like the graphical user interface and the mouse. But Kirby didn't stop with creativity and originality. In his YouTube doc series, This Is Not a Conspiracy Theory, he showed us how we build belief systems the same way we build music and other creative forms of art, by remixing. We borrow facts, half-truths, culture, and gut feelings to construct meaning. Some of those stories inspire us, others mislead us. So join me in welcoming Kirby Ferguson so we can dig deeper into this fascinating topic. Hi, Kirby.
Hi, Barry.
Hey, I'm so excited about you being here because, Everything's a Remix has really had a tremendous impact on me personally. I'm an inventor, I'm a filmmaker, visual effects professional, but I've always recognized that my accomplishments have been built upon the innovations of those who passed before me. I mean, in a patent, prior art is not there for an accident. There's a lot that's gone before me. So your documentary presented this reality in a very, very clear yet incredibly entertaining fashion. And what I want to start out with is the basic question: what inspired you to explore the idea back in 2010 to produce a documentary that expresses how nothing is original? And has your thinking about remixing evolved since then?
It emerged. Everything is Remixed, the original version of it. I've rebooted it once and a half over the years. It emerged out of a period where companies were freaking out over their IP. This seems so long ago now, but back then there were just these wild court cases that were going on where, like, a woman got sued for posting a brief video clip of her baby dancing to Prince's "Let's Go Crazy." I forget if Prince was alive at the time, but Prince is litigious and was litigious then. I believe the estate is still litigious now, and sued just this random lady who uploaded this like crappy audio recording of "Let's Go Crazy." Like you can recognize it, but that's about the extent of it. And it was a home video that she made, but shared it on the internet and went viral, and millions of people saw it, and she ended up getting sued. So there were wild, frightening, alarming cases like that going on, not just about what we would now call that sort of like remixing, I suppose. Not just remixing type things or memes, creative works, but also just straight up piracy. Napster had happened a while before this. Pirate Bay was very much a big thing at the time, and piracy was still like very much a live topic of that era for sure. This is before streaming, like really, like I forget if Netflix was streaming at that point, but anyway, it hadn't become. We didn't have the HBO Maxes and the Disney Pluses and all that. It wasn't like super easy to just get a subscription and watch a bunch of movies and shows. And I think that fed the fire of people illegally downloading. So there was this period of time where there was this conversation going on about the ownership of ideas and what you can do with these expressions that are broadcast. Like, we all grow up with these songs and these movies, and like, do we just receive them and like, can we not do anything back with them? It seemed that like that was mostly the arrangement. It seemed like that was mostly the arrangement back then, and that has changed radically in the years since then. But that was the moment that it emerged from. But also it was personal, because I had always struggled with originality. Like, I always felt like I was not original. I idolized musicians in particular, like didn't understand music, didn't know how they did what they did, but idolized them, like, and thought that they were just different than people like me were. So I had this very kind of exaggerated idea of what the creative act was at the time, and struggled with being creative. I think that because that concept held me back, I thought that it was something that you just had or you didn't have, and I didn't understand that you could just like practice and work hard and get better at it. And then by the time I made the series, I was understanding that, like I had learned a lot about that in the years since. So that was the moment in time that it emerged from, and my personal background. Those kind of came together, and that was where the idea came from. I had no clue of that at the time. It just sort of came out of me. But reflecting on it since then, I figured that out.
Well, it's interesting because it's worse now in terms of intellectual property. Don't you think?
Why do you say that? Why do you say that? I don't know. Why do you think that?
Well, the whole AI thing it's
yes. I mean, there's that.
Yeah, I mean,
but let me interject there before we get into that, because I think like I want to make sure people understand that back then, like now, media companies understand that if you take their show, their movie, whatever, and you slice it up and you do your reaction videos and you make your memes and you spit out all these little bits of media, that all feeds into your property, and that is good. People did not understand that back then. So people want you, companies want you within limits. They don't want you to post the whole freaking movie or whatever, but they want you to make these supporting bits of media. They want to go viral. They want these little bits to go viral. It's all free marketing for them, right? So they love it. So that is something that has changed immensely. And there's also things that you can do now, like on YouTube. A lot of the time, I do this all the time. You can just upload a song and make it the score of your video, and the company that the distributor of that song will just claim your revenue. And I think that's a fair deal. That seems okay to me. Like it does seem like in some of the newer companies or some of the younger acts are splitting the revenue, which seems more fair. But either way, it seems like a decent deal, rather than just getting your video taken down, which does happen sometimes. But it used to be, really harsh penalties that you encountered for doing things like that. So you also can use other people's media in a much more free way. So when it comes to actually like people making content, like downloading things, remixing it, uploading things, that is just radically better than it used to be.
Yeah, well, but you mentioned that nobody really owns their creative work entirely, and that's very provocative. Can you explain what you mean by that? Because especially in a world where we have copyright laws specifically designed to establish ownership.
Yeah, I think it's always, to be clear, I do think you should have a limited term of ownership of the thing that you make. And I do think it's yours for some period of time, but then I think it returns sort of like plant matter decays and should go back into the earth and feed the next generation of plant matter. I look at it that way. It's yours for a while, but then it should go back and be a commonly owned thing after a while. So I do think you should own it for a bit, because otherwise there's no incentive to create. Just like in this, patents have the exact same logic behind them. You need to be able to capitalize for a while on your idea. So I do believe that there should be ownership for a while, and I do think copyright works well in lots of different ways. But I do think that it should revert to being publicly owned.
I'm so glad to hear that, because I could have used you during the congressional hearings in the 90s about colorization.
Were you at those?
Oh yeah, I was totally immersed in all of that stuff with Ted Turner and his people.
Yes.
John Ford coming in with his oxygen tanks, and everybody, saying,
Oh, wow.
wringing their hands, Woody Allen, the whole thing. Yeah, that was quite a period of time. But derivative works really are a significant thing. I mean, my patents are derivative works. I think the interesting thing about your work is that you use clips from film, music, and other media to illustrate your points, essentially remixing to explain remixing. Have you faced any copyright challenges for your own work?
Never. No, it's never happened. I mean, I'm kind of a funny target. I would be kind of a tough target because I am maybe baiting a little bit with what I'm doing. And it got popular enough that I think just in the initial run that I think it would have been bad publicity for somebody to go after me. So I might have had that in my favor. And then since then, I've probably been too small to just care about. But also, it's just the way things work now. Like people make videos using other people's film clips and stuff. And as long as you don't directly monetize it, like try to sell it to Netflix or whatever, you can do that. So, the rules of the game have changed at this point. But I've never. No, never. I'm sure I've upset some people. I'm sure that has happened, but I've never actually I've never had a court case.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you. I mean, you must have gotten a lot of critics, a lot of pushback. Who?
Not as much as you.
Not as much as.
Sorry. Finish your.
No. I'm wondering, where were your biggest critics? Who were your biggest critics?
I mean, it wasn't, you know what, something that I've experienced in my years on the internet. So this was like 2010 to 2015 is like the area where the series was really hopping. And it was just a very different era of the internet. It was not nearly so mean. Smartphones weren't, especially in the early part of that time period, they weren't so pervasive. And just everybody wasn't on the internet at that point. So like your uncle wasn't necessarily on the internet, or maybe he was at home on his home computer and would go on for an hour at night or whatever. But people weren't just on there all the time. So it was a very different. It was still more of a nerdy place, especially in my neck of the woods. More altruistic. It's more like kind people sharing things. So that was the culture that I was creating for, was this kind of gentler realm. So I didn't face that much at the time. And honestly, I can only think of, like, there were only a couple things, and there weren't even people. I mean, I guess there were a few in the years after that, but it was mostly just people kind of leaving cranky comments or whatever. And there wasn't anybody of too much prominence that really came after me. And a fair amount of the complaints were just because people had an issue with something specific I said. It wasn't kind of the thesis of the whole thing. And I think the thesis of the whole thing was just tough to argue with, because it was, the reason that I was so comfortable making the argument was because I felt that it was so obvious. So the argument is that we build our ideas on top of other ideas. It's as simple as that. It's not a new idea. It's just something that I foregrounded and said, like, this is the story. I'm telling this story, and it's just about this. Plenty of people had said it, like, in passing and in lots of other different settings before that, but I focused on it and made it a narrative. So it wasn't anything new. And it's something that people have known for a really long time. So I felt very comfortable making the argument, and it's just tough it's tough to come up with an alternative argument. Yeah. Like, if you don't build your ideas on top of other ideas, well, what are you building them on top of? Just nothing. You're just creating them out of thin air. It's got to come from someplace. It's always got to come from someplace.
Yeah, I love how you started out with talking about hip hop and copying, and then you get into rap and sampling. And then you got in. I mean, then you got into rock, and you showed what you talked about. One of the most debated cases, which is the Led Zeppelin case.
Mm-hmm. The Stairway to Heaven case.
Yeah, they built. I mean, their sound was built on blues riffs and lyrics from other artists.
Oh, all the cases. You mean? Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Led Zeppelin are like the most notorious. I'm using this term loosely, but they have been called ripoffs by various people. So they're the only band I honestly can think of their stature who has kind of repeatedly stepped in terms of songwriting credits. And it mostly happened in their first and second albums when they were very young and not that huge and iconic of a band at that point. So Zeppelin have gotten it wrong. They've mostly corrected these misattributed songwriting credits. They have mostly fixed them along the way. Most of this happened a long time ago. So they've come clean in a lot of these cases. There's other ones that are more ambiguous. But it clearly is just part of the way that they worked. And it is something that earlier blues musicians would have done without thinking of. You would have taken this riff and merged it into your song. You like that lyric and you throw it into your song, and they all would have done it back in the day. But you just can't, when there's buttloads of money, you can't work in the same way anymore. So I don't know why they did it, if it was just they didn't know, or they were just trying to make as much money as they possibly could at the time. They were very young and hungry at the time. I don't begrudge them, and I feel like they've made good on most of it. But it is kind of a mar on their brilliance, especially in those early years. But again, I love Led Zeppelin. I think they're, especially Jimmy Page. I'm a huge fan of Jimmy Page, and it's an unfortunate, maybe youthful faux pas of theirs.
Well, for the audience, let's take a quick look at how you illustrate that point in your documentary.
After the breakup of the band The Yardbirds, their virtuoso guitarist, Jimmy Page, starts a new group. He recruits John Paul Jones, Robert Plant, and John Bonham to form Led Zeppelin. They play a new kind of incredibly loud electric blues, and within just a few years, they're the biggest band on the planet. And yet, Led Zeppelin are dogged by controversy. Many critics and peers label them as rip-offs. The case goes like this. Dazed and Confused features different lyrics, but is clearly an uncredited cover of the same titled song by Jake Holmes. Holmes files suit over 40 years later in 2010. A settlement is reached, and Holmes' name is finally added to the credits.
Been dazed and confused for so long, it's not true. I'm dazed and confused, hanging on by a thread.
The iconic guitar riff of Whole Lotta Love is the creation of Jimmy Page, but Robert Plant lifts some of the lyrics from Willie Dixon's You Need Love.
Way down inside, honey, you need it. Way down inside, woman, you need love. Woman, you need...
The Lemon Song is also mostly a Zeppelin original, but includes more copied lyrics, this time from Howlin' Wolf's Killin' Floor.
I should have quit you.
And the most famous example is Zeppelin's biggest hit, Stairway to Heaven, the opening of which resembles Spirit's Taurus. A battle is waged in court for years, and Zeppelin finally prevails in 2020, when the song is found to not infringe copyright.
Seeing that, did you really think Zeppelin really did cross the line between influence and plagiarism?
Yeah, I really do. Yeah, I think it's clear. It's rarely so clear They absolutely did, and they've admitted it in a lot of these cases. They actually have amended the songwriting credits to give credit to Willie Dixon or whoever it was that they were whose work they were using. So yeah, they absolutely have, and I forget the total number of songwriting credits that they revised, but there were a handful of them that they changed. So they've admitted it, and just the pattern of it is there's too much of it happening. Like there are more examples that I could have used in that segment of the video. So there's just a lot of it, and it's clearly just part of how it seems like it's part of how Jimmy Page and Robert Plant thought. I do think Robert Plant maybe did more of it. There was more lyric copying going on, maybe. But it's clearly part of the creative process of both of them. They were both nicking parts of songs that they liked and merging them into their own songs. So yeah, they certainly went over the line. Again, they've made amends for it. I forgive them, but I'm not sure I can think of another band who's done that, who's screwed up.
And yet they
that frequently.
And yet they prevailed against the claims from Spirit.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, in the Stairway case. Yeah, that was the case. That was still happening. So Spirit had a song. Oh gosh, oh my God, am I going to blank on it? Do you remember what it's called, Barry?
Taurus.
Taurus. They had this quite unnoteworthy song called Taurus that has a section that has the same sort of medieval feel that the opening of Stairway has. Like the more rockin' sections of Stairway don't sound anything like Taurus, but there is that opening kind of medievally feeling section that sounds like Taurus. They toured with this band Spirit. There's good reason to think that they were exposed to the song, and they sound a lot alike. They sound a lot alike. I'm not quite sure. I tend to think that they did take it. They might not remember it. That's a thing that people do. It would have been Page that would have taken that. He might not remember having done it. It might have like marinated in his mind and came out again, and it's whitewashed, and he thinks it's his at that point. That totally could have happened. But I do tend to think he did it. I don't think it's a great tragedy, because it is kind of I think it's kind of a minor overall part of the song, and it is a fairly elemental thing that is happening. Like it's not that distinctive of a moment, of a passage of music. So I don't think it's any great tragedy that they weren't able to get compensation for that. I also am a little skeptical sometimes when these things happen so much later. I guess if it happens later in the person's life, the original musician, I can understand it. But when it's estates and stuff getting involved, I get a little grossed out by it. And I think it's just people who are trying to maximize whatever profit they can possibly get. And I do think certainly if you do get ripped off in a songwriting case, like do it back then. do when it happens. Don't do it all these years later. But I do understand for these guys who are getting older and they can't earn the way that they used to, that they could do that.
Well, I thought it was great how you built the history of the remix culture in music, but then when you got into current day, it really got very interesting, especially when you talk about TikTok and the prevalence of memes in particular, and how memes in particular exemplify modern remix culture. In fact, you examine memes as perhaps the purest form of remix culture.
Gosh, did I say that?
Yes, you did.
The purest form of remix? Did I really? In the video? The purest form?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to double check that. That just doesn't sound like me. Gosh, I hope I'm not screwing this up right now. That does happen. It has been long enough ago that I could be forgetting. I do think that memes are, maybe I said the clearest. They are a very clear example of remixing. Because you are so clearly building on what somebody else did. Like somebody else took the photo, they put a caption on it, and not only did you use the exact same font and everything that they did probably, but you used the same structure of joke and you played on the joke that they did in the previous meme. So memes are indeed a very clear example of remixing in popular culture. And they aren't just, I think a lot of people think memes are just the still images with text on them. But of course, memes can be lots of other forms of media. They can be videos, they can be audio, they can like any little snippet. This is the popular way that we think of it anyway. Any little snippet of media that is clearly like where there's a chain of conversation and jokes and criticism that are extending from that piece of media. Those are memes. So they can be those still images, they can be little songs, all these little viral biddies that we encounter in the world. These are all memes. And they're one of the major, like they're the distinctive cultural form of the internet, and they are remixes, very much remixes. And some of these platforms are remix platforms, basically. Like TikTok started out as a lip syncing application where like the audio was not yours. Like you would play the audio and you would lip sync along to it and dance or whatever. And that was what the platform was designed to do, and it's still very much like that remix ethos is still very much baked into how TikTok works. So memes are, I think, and I love that memes, the modern usage of memes taps into this idea from Richard Dawkins from The Selfish Gene, which is where the concept came from. I love that it links you to this larger idea of memes as just these units of cultural transmission, sort of like the way genes are the units of life. Memes are the units of culture that transmit ideas, and they evolve over time. I love that, I love that we happen to call them memes because it leads you to this larger, much more interesting idea.
Yeah, I think you actually called it profound. Not only funny, but profound. You could check on that one too.
I called what profound?
Memes.
I called memes profound. Oh, I do remember that. Yes, I do remember that.
Oh, good. I didn't think I was going crazy, but no, I mean,
it's the pure part that I don't.
No,
remember.
I mean,
again, I hope I'm not.
They certainly have had a huge influence on our culture for sure today.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I have nothing further to say about it, but yeah, memes are the, again, like especially for, I don't think people understand it for young people. Like memes are this, like when it comes to kids having cultural conversations, like memes are it. Memes are the through line of the conversations that they're having. So younger people in particular, memes are the dominant, I would argue dominant form of media culture.
Yeah, and TikTok as well. I mean, both of them are
Yes.
really total remixes, and they've both democratized the creative process, don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, memes are a bit similar to AI in that they are ultra simple to make. Anybody can download an image and put type on it. It's a very simple, primitive thing to do. And like its primitiveness is sort of part of its charm. Like a lot of these memes, like they're copies of copies of copies, and they're degraded and they're distorted and they're all screwed up. And that's part of the humor of them, is that they're kind of messed up. So memes are so profound. They're so profound.
Yeah. But I hate to use the word ethics because it's so subjective, but do you think that there's a platform today in social media that does remix right, both in terms of creativity and quote unquote ethics?
I haven't looked into that in that much depth, but I am generally impressed with YouTube's music system. Gosh, what's it called? Their copyright. I forget the exact name of it, but YouTube's copyright system for music, I think works quite well, and is I mentioned this earlier, but it will claim 100% of your revenue, which to me seems like it should be a split of some sort. Like let the creator keep something, a quarter of it, 20, 25% or whatever. So it does seem maybe a bit much, but it works pretty well. And a lot of people don't know this, but there is an exception where if you keep the snippet of music below 10 seconds, this isn't publicly said, but it is definitely the way that it works, because I've tested it a lot. If you keep the clip of audio below 10 seconds, it actually won't trigger the system. So you can have short excerpts of music, copyrighted music, that you can include in your video if you're criticizing or whatever. And also, I have used the fair use appeal system on YouTube, and I think it works pretty well. The tables are generally tilted towards the copyright owners on YouTube, but you can appeal if your video gets pulled down because of copyright, and I have done that, and that has worked because like for instance, in the Led Zeppelin case, I was that was criticism and commentary. So it's fair use to do that. I can use these longer portions of Led Zeppelin's music. But in other cases, I'm just using music because I want to use fun music in the video. And those would get a copyright claim against them. Not a copyright strike, but a copyright claim. So I think YouTube, when it comes to music, does it pretty well. The other ones, I don't know, seem a bit more Wild West to me, for sure. It's always, it's tricky. Like systems like this of this scale are very tricky. Tricky to engineer, because you don't want a bunch of people who are just capitalizing on whatever these rules are and just cranking out all sorts of stuff that makes a little bit of money, and then your platform just gets drowned in something like spam that people are cranking out because it makes a tiny little bit of money if they upload a segment of a song and say a little something about it or whatever. Maybe that turns out that can make a tiny bit of money, and then just a zillion people do it. It's tough to get these systems right, for sure. But I do think that the YouTube music system, it works pretty darn well, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, after you establish that foundation in music and remixing, you started to get into cinema. And another powerful case of remixing is in cinema, and Star Wars in particular, you mentioned.
Yeah, Star Wars, again, this is no one had broken it down visually like I had done at the time, but it was fairly well known at the time that Star Wars was sort of this collage of Western films, war films, samurai films.
Yeah.
I didn't get into this much, but sci-fi fiction as well. Like there's a big Dune influence on Star Wars. There's a big Lord of the Rings influence on Star Wars. But when it comes to the films, I focus more on the films because I can actually show those like side by side. It's visual and engaging. But there's actually plenty of scenes in Star Wars that just unfold in very similar ways to the way that they did in the original films. And something that they did in post that they actually talk about in a documentary called The Empire of Dreams is during like the war scenes, like on the Millennium Falcon when they're shooting the TIE fighters. They actually used clips from earlier World War II films, and you can still see that what they use in the film actually kind of looks like what they used in these rough cuts that they made. And then it also extends to the music. I didn't get into this, but I found out later the music in Star Wars is very, very remixy. Like clearly, again, it was probably Lucas that was establishing this. He was probably saying like, I like this piece, and like, give me a piece, something like this. I forget the exact examples, but and they sound a lot alike. He would use these iconic pieces of classical music, some of which I think were still in copyright at the time, and might still be. So it extended to the score as well, like this hugely iconic score that Star Wars had. So Star Wars is very much the first film, sort of like the way that Led Zeppelin's first album and some of the second album had this very remixy ethos. Star Wars really has it. Empire Strikes Back, not nearly so much. It seems like when you can see the remix samples in the work, it is something that is more clear with younger artists. I think with people who are starting to develop their voice. I think they haven't maybe learned to cover their tracks. But they also just the process hasn't unfolded enough. They haven't transformed their influences enough that you can't see where they came from. That the original Star Wars film, in particular, is very much a remixy concoction.
Well, for the sake of the audience, let's take a look at that.
Some of the most innovative, influential, and popular films did a lot of copying. Star Wars pioneered a new genre of science fiction by merging together sci-fi with adventure serials, westerns, war films, and samurai films. Quentin Tarantino's early films clearly copied elements from countless other films. Jordan Peele's Get Out followed the template of The Stepford Wives and transformed the feminist horror drama of the original into a nightmare about secretive racism. And the best superhero film was created in this same way, by remixing ideas from the past to create something that is both new and familiar. That film is... I am so sorry, that is not the right clip. That film is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
All right, let's do this one last time.
Kirby, why does cultural remixing connect so deeply? Is it the audiences want what they consider familiar? I mean, if you look at Star Wars, I mean, those are all familiar cuts and everything. Is that why sequels and remakes are so popular? Is it why Snow White failed so miserably?
Well, it doesn't work all the time. There's no rules for any of this stuff. But I think the larger, when it comes to like that Snow White example, the larger illustration at work there is that Disney is in the midst of rebooting all these like classic animated films and doing these sort of like pseudo-y live action versions of them. That's currently their major cultural undertaking. So movies are always this like really dramatic and maybe exaggerated example of the power of IPs. It's like everything has to be an IP, and now the latest thing is that it seems that the new trend might be that it is video game IPs that dominate, because Minecraft movie did so well. The Super Mario's brother movie also did super well. So it's seeming like movies are these giant creations that are very, very expensive to make. So there's a lot of risk aversion in the industry. So, and it seems like the surest bets, generally speaking, and I know that like the Snow White film was not successful, but in the aggregate, these films do seem to be the most successful bets that these studios can come up with. So it is partially an artifact of just the scale of these enterprises and how big the investment is and the level of caution that they have to put into them. And also like the marketplace has changed, like post-COVID and stuff, like movies are not what they used to be, and streaming and all these other forces. So there's a lot of pressure on the movie industry in particular, but it is clear that in a large culture, the winners win big. Like that is the way that it works when you're in a big network. The winners win big, and they are in a good position to capitalize and keep winning after that. And I think that happens with IPs, and it happens with YouTube channels. It happens with Mr. Beast. Like he gets really, really, really huge, and then he gets to just be really, really huge for a long time. And like, have we had another really huge YouTuber, or many of them emerge, since then? I don't know. Maybe I'm not young enough to know. But certainly in large networks, winners win big. And that is something that happens not just in movies, but in culture at large. But we're seeing green shoots in Hollywood as well. Like they've been trying original films lately, and mostly they have not worked, but some of them have. What was the example of the one that did work? I mean, of course, there was Oppenheimer a couple of years ago, but there was something else more recently. I'll remember it at some point, but there has been some success along with the failure there. And I think like along with Hollywood's struggles have come there's some sense of innovation that is going on in Hollywood that I find a bit heartening. They are trying other things and they're failing, but at least they're trying.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the superhero movies are still the same formula. Fight.
Yeah, but it sort of seems like their reign is over. It's funny. I was saying this for years too, like that. Gosh, I mean, it seems like superhero films were dying for a decade, and of course they're not dead, and they will never die. But it seems like they might not be the dominant form anymore. Like since it seems like the Avengers series was the pinnacle of that. And since that, it's not been the same.
Unfortunately, I don't think Marvel's moving away from it too quick. My studio.
I think they.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think they haven't had many big successes, and they've had plenty of failures since then. I think.
Oh yeah, they have had failures for sure.
They're going to have to mix it up. Yeah.
Yeah, but my studio converted most of those Marvel's movies through they weren't shot in 3D. They were converted, and primarily because of all of the visual effects and everything. So I saw those movies frame by frame, and oh my God,
wow,
it's torture. Frankly, they're all exactly the same.
Yes. Oh yeah. Especially the last 20 minutes of them, or 30 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever, where they're just the bad good guys fighting the bad guy for a really long time. Yeah.
You mentioned 3 key elements to remixing: copy, transform, and combine. Which do you think is the most undervalued and misunderstood by critics today?
I think that copy, transform, and combine are I call them the 3 basic elements of creativity, and they're the 3 tools that you have at your disposal when you are creating things. And I think they're also sort of the process that we go through roughly as we develop as artists. Like early on, we do more of the copying, especially when you're young. You do nothing but copy. But you also will probably transform even without intending it. Like when you're a small child and you're trying to draw whatever, like you're putting your own spin on it, even though you don't mean to. And then after that, probably combine, where you can combine different concepts, bring them together. Again, children can do this, but it's a little bit more intellectual, takes a bit more abstract thought than the transformation. The transformation can just happen in the doing of it. So combine is sort of the most complex of those 3 things. In the series, I talk about how combine is the most powerful one. Like when you bring together seemingly unrelated things. That's one of the themes that I've discovered, and other people have talked about it. When you can connect technologies or ideas that don't seem related, bring them together, make them make sense, make them function, give them a use. That's super, super powerful and really, really hard to do. It's really, really hard to see the connections between these things. It takes a lot of imagination to do that. So combine is the most powerful one. The most misunderstood one, I would say, though, is transform, because transforming, I think, is just the nitty-gritty work of like year after year hanging in there and doing their thing with whatever your craft is. And I think something that like I didn't get into in the series that maybe I will in the future, is just the amount of time that it takes to get anywhere with having a distinctive style. Like you really got to just hang in there in the trenches. And I think a lot of what you're doing in that time is just you're slowly building your voice. Like as you build that first creation, the next one, you change your techniques a bit, you change your tactics, you change how you execute the various styles you use. Like it all just sort of morphs as you move along. And I think the transformation is that part that takes a long time. It takes a lot of grit and a lot of hard work to get anywhere with it. So transform, I would say, is the most underrated of those 3 tools and the most misunderstood. People don't understand just how much time you got to put into that to really make it work.
That's where the true creative effort comes in, transforming.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think combine as well takes a lot of creative effort. Like just bringing those disconnected things together and making them work can really be a lot of hard work.
Well, I want to get into AI, but before I do that, I want to mention something about work that you did during Everything is a Remix or after. You created another series entitled "This Is Not a Conspiracy Theory," where you explore how we connect disparate facts and stories into grand, often misguided explanations. And I mentioned to you that I see that as part of the remix spectrum, only the darker form. Before you comment on it, let's take a brief look at that exploration in a trailer.
Everybody has a theory. That podcast has a theory. That YouTuber has a theory. That news site has a theory. That channel has a theory. That book has a theory. And that feed, it has lots of theories. Everybody has a theory. You have a theory. Theories make sense of the endless stream of events whizzing past us every day. Theories ease our anxieties and make us feel that we can anticipate the future. An increasingly popular type of theory is the conspiracy theory, a dramatic style of story that depicts history as the massive, unfolding plot of secretive elites.
They want to be your priest. They want to be your god. They want to be your ruler. They want to be your controller.
Conspiracy theories mostly flow through the outskirts of popular culture, but during times of instability, they can flood the mainstream. Now is one of those times. Conspiracy theories lure us in with an exciting promise to expose the invisible, to unveil the imperceptible laws that control the world around us. Much like science once revealed the forces that guide the sun, the moon, and the stars. But conspiracy theories are not like the immensely powerful theories of science. They're notorious for their dubious evidence, flawed reasoning, and absurd conclusions.
The elections are rigged. Trump loses. Hillary Rodham Clinton wins in 2016.
Despite their endless failures, conspiracy theories are important, not only because so many people believe them, but because they reveal an essential truth about how we make sense of the world. Conspiracy theories are an exaggerated version of how we all think, and they're driven by one of the greatest ideas of modern science. This mechanical vision of planning and control is absorbed into our culture. And yet, this idea has failed to make sense of the complexity of human society. It has failed to reveal the hidden forces that shape our lives. But new realms of science are revealing these forces. We are seeing that the enemy is not really an enemy at all. We are seeing that we are guided, constrained, and even controlled by the systems we have made, by the rules we ourselves created. And these systems have no ideology. They have no ambition. They are not greedy. They are not good. And they are not evil. They are simply not like us.
Do you agree that it's maybe the other end of the spectrum of remix?
Completely, and I think that's really well put. Something that, like, I think conspiracy films actually were an influence on everything is remix. I remember I saw a film called Zeitgeist, which was super viral around maybe 2007, I believe, and 2008 probably. And that was the sort of thing where I watched it and I was like, wow, this is really this is powerful stuff. And it's this really rough and ready. It seemed slick at the time, but it was a very like rough little handmade kind of internet documentary, mostly made out of other people's footage in a remixy style. But it was a sort of thing where it seems really cool, and then you look into it and you're like, oh, okay, this is all nonsense. Or most of it was mostly. There's a lot of stuff that was super, super wrong in it. So I've always kind of had a fascination with them, and they were an influence on the original remix idea, because the way that those conspiracy theories get made is always in this very, always, it is like going back to the JFK conspiracy theories or whatever, like they are these media entities where you're taking the Zapruder film or the still images of whatever, or the documents, and you're slicing and dicing them and building your thesis out of that. So unquestionably, it is the dark side of everything is a remix. I've never quite thought of it that way. I appreciate having that sort of outside perspective on it. So yeah, it's very much this sort of dark thing that we're all guilty of to some degree. But I do think that you can, most of us, it's fairly minor, the way that we can indulge in sort of conspiracy type thinking. And unfortunately, like very sadly to me, like a real disappointment for me has been like the difference in the prevalence of conspiracy theories between when I started that project. I worked on that for like a super long time, and I finished it like almost 5 years ago. like just the ascent of conspiracy theories in that time has been really tough to watch. Like I started that series with them positioned as sort of this concerning but marginal force, and now they're just completely center stage and dominant in a lot of ways. And that reign, I have no doubt that reign will end. It has to, like things that don't work, can't endure. They can't hang in there year after year when they're just starkly wrong and not working. So I think this moment will pass as well as they all do. But yeah, that's well put, Barry.
It seems like it's getting worse to me. I mean, it's human nature to find patterns and
Could be.
things.
You might be right. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying at some point it will
Yeah.
it will decline.
Well, do you think that the internet has sort of supercharged dark remixing?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I mean, would we be where we are without the internet is an open question, right? Absolutely. I mean, I haven't thought about it. I'm not sure I have anything real insightful to say about it, but this filtering of people, I think, is a major problem for sure. The way that you can immerse yourselves into these subcultures that seem incredibly huge, like if you want to go into anti-vax land, it can just seem like this huge world where it's like, wow, there's all this evidence and this must make sense. It can seem really, really large when actually it's just this tiny little fragment of the culture, and it is large to us, but relative to like scientific knowledge about vaccines, it's actually very small. So this filtering, this algorithmic filtering that happens to us all, I think is a major part of the problem. And there is this, like, diagnosing what exactly is going on in the world is very difficult, but it's happening kind of everywhere at about the same time. Which makes me think that the major thing that has changed in that time has been social media and smartphones. So I think they are absolutely a huge part of the problem.
Well, let's get into AI for a second. Do you think AI is just remixing at speed, or is it something totally new?
It is it is remixing without a human intent behind it. I mean, I guess there is intent in that somebody is prompting it, but the actual algorithm, I'm not sure that people totally understand that AI, it is just an algorithm. It is just giving you, for instance, with ChatGPT, it is processing language and it is giving you back words that sound like something a person would say. This is the most likely thing that a person would say. It's giving you that back. It has been called autocorrect on steroids, and that is what it is. It is an extension and elaboration of the technology of autocorrect, where you're typing a word and it pops up and it looks like you're trying to spell algorithm, which is a really hard word for me to spell, and it will finish it for you. It's super handy. It's an extension of that concept where it has modeled the entirety of internet text, not entirety, but a big chunk of it, and it is giving you the most probable response to what it is that you are saying. So they are these algorithmically defined things that don't have the complexity that a human imagination does, but they absolutely are remixing in that they are trained on the stuff that we made, just like we train on the different movies and albums and books and stuff that we consume, and then we start creating things. That's exactly what they do. They are trained on the text of the internet or the images of the internet or the video that's on the internet. And then through algorithms, they can give you back something that is some sort of merged, transformed, remixed from the training data. It can give you media back that looks like something a person would do some of the time. So it is absolutely remix-like. And the thing that is missing to it, that separates it from what we do, is just that unpredictable dark matter of the human imagination is lacking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you and I connected during the writer's strike. I was
Yeah.
personally irritated by that because I know that most writers use AI. They just didn't want to be replaced by AI. And knowing how Hollywood works and the executive mindset, they could very well give a script to an intern and say, use AI on it. That could happen for sure.
Sure. And at least give you a draft. Yeah. But yeah, that's absolutely like a valid concern, especially when it comes to content where like the bar is lower, like when it comes to, for instance, children's programming. I can see how you could just churn out lots of children's programming that could be written by AI and nobody would know it because it's just simpler. It's a simpler form. I do think with my experience with them, and I've used them a lot at this point, talking about large language models, is that storytelling is not something that they're good at, for sure. They're better at like individual sentences or maybe a paragraph. As it gets longer, things get much less coherent because it doesn't have that sort of comprehension about storytelling. So I actually don't think it's good at storytelling, for sure. I've never seen that. But can it make junk that maybe some people out there would watch? I'm sure it can do that. So it's a valid concern, but I doubt that any of the like premier cultural products that are out there are going to be getting pumped out by ChatGPT anytime soon.
We'll have to see. We've got a lot of nervous people out there in the industry. A lot of people. Let's talk about AI art for a second, because I think we may have a disagreement here, because I personally feel that the creative process is really in describing the image that you're going to create. A human being can use prose to create sentience that would in another individual. They could create crying. They could create sadness. If you prompt an image using the same sort of prose, I see that as a creative process. And I think that the outcome could very well be considered sentient in a way. What do you think?
I would not agree with that use of the word sentient. Like, I think when you communicate an expression to another person, you're not creating sentience. And sentience is an awareness of that you are alive and you exist. You're creating a feeling in them, but I wouldn't say you're creating a sentience in them. So I think I would disagree. That's my understanding of sentience anyway. So I think I would disagree with it in that fashion. But that prompts are absolutely can be artistic. I have no doubt. Anything that the person does in this equation, that person is just as creative as people have always been. I do not question that part one little bit. My experience of using them, and this is not theoretical, this is based on what they are now, and it's not a prediction about the future, is that an output from ChatGPT or ChatGPT 4 image generation, which is very impressive, is their new image generator, or Sora, which is their video generator, or these other very impressive video generators out there, that something is just going to be emitted from these systems and you're going to use it. And that will be the creation. I think that's not going to happen a lot for a while in creative work, because it's just too easy. Unless you've done something very sophisticated and different and unusual and hard to replicate in your prompting, I don't think that we'll have much interest in that kind of stuff, because there'll just be too much of it. It'll be everywhere. If it's easy to make, everybody's going to make it, and it will have no value. But my experience of using them has been that you still have to do a lot of remixing of this stuff to merge it together. And there's all sorts of flaws in these things. Like text generation is the gold standard of AI right now, but image generation, which is very impressive, is super wonky. Like it's really messed up. And video generation is another level of messed up. It's like super messed up. So you get all this goofy stuff in it that you've got to get rid of, and that it's going to go away. I question that it's going to go away with this particular technology, because it doesn't understand the world. It doesn't know what's right, for the same reason that it will continue to hallucinate to some degree. In ChatGPT, there will be hallucinations where it will just make up like whatever, because it doesn't know what true or false is. It doesn't understand that there is a single reason out there for why something happened or whatever. They don't get it. They don't have this sort of knowledge, and that's just how they work. That's just how they work. It's not a bug. It's a feature that they hallucinate. They're always hallucinating. That's all they do is hallucinate. I think that just there's going to be a lot. I tend to think in the near term that the AI artists that we're going to see are going to be creating models. They're going to be doing a lot of clever things with the output that they get from these models. They will be bridging models together to be doing a variety of interesting things. So I think like the area of value, the area that is the most defining of what these creative works will be the person. It'll be right back to being the person. That is my guess as to what is going to go on for a while. But I think it's going to like shuffle the deck in a serious kind of way. And like, as I mentioned to you earlier, like in the sort of in the kind of lower value forms, like children's programming is one that I mentioned, where you can potentially just, it doesn't have to be great. It just has to be okay. There's realms like that are concerning, where they can just get ground out by AI, and that will be a cultural conversation that we'll have to have.
That's great. Well, listen, we're going to be wrapping this up, but I want to know what your next project is.
I'm not 100% sure. I'm not completely sure this will happen. But I have been working on a new version of Everything is Remix that is specific to AI, called Infinite Remix, which basically takes the premise of Everything is Remix and applies it just to AI. So it's just a series about AI, about creative AI in particular. And it's meant to be a sense-making journey through what is going on here. It's meant to further the conversation. It's also meant to demonstrate what can be done with these tools. Like, I really want to put these tools to the task and show what they can or can't do, and encourage people to get in there, get in the game, and use them as well, and help form norms and change rules about how this stuff works, because it's still early on and all this stuff is malleable. It's all still this hasn't set, the roles haven't set in the world of AI. So rather than just saying like, let's ban this technology or whatever, or prevent it from developing further, like, let's try to make it something better, because I don't think it's going away. That's my guess. It's just not going to go away. So let's make it better, and that will be part of the journey of that series as well. So potentially a new video series called Infinite Remix is my next thing, but I'm not totally sure.
Sounds great. I can't wait for that one. So people can go to YouTube and see Everything's a Remix, and this is not a conspiracy theory. And I know you also have some great merchandise too. As a matter of fact, I just ordered a T-shirt. Everything is Remix T-shirt. Where can people find out more about it?
Well, thank you for that, Barry. Everythingisremix.info. If you just Google Everything is a Remix, you will find me, no problem. And there's a shop there. We have merchandise, and we have courses. I'm very proud of these. I spent a lot of time working on them. I have a ChatGPT course, and I have a creativity course called the Remix Method.
Yeah, I did see that. So you are actually doing courses as well. That's really great. And
yes.
People can sign up for it on that the website?
Yep. At the website, you can sign up for those courses, and you can get a free preview as well.
Great. Kirby, this has been really a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you taking the time to actually come on and talk to our Westcliff podcast audience. I know this has been informative to them, certainly been informative to me, and I never stop evangelizing your work because I think it's so great.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I love hearing that, Barry. That's so awesome. And it was a pleasure to talk to you. And I loved your perspective on the material as well. Like, it's always a pleasure to talk to people who like really know the work and have their own insights on what I'm doing as well. Because when you're in there doing it, there's awareness that you don't have when you're in there doing the work yourself. You sometimes don't have this kind of larger perspective, and it's always fun to hear that from other people. So it was a super pleasure. I was very happy to make the time and get to meet.
Great. Thanks a lot. I want to tell you a little bit about purposefulbuying.org. It's entirely managed by our smart capstone students. The platform sells Nepalese products, with all proceeds going to Pahar Trust, a 30-year-old charity that's building schools in many of the most remote villages in Nepal. Check out purposefulbuying.org. In closing, I want to thank our Westcliff Distinguished Speaker Series audience. This concludes the Spring Speaker Series. If you want to see any of the previous speakers, they can be found on our YouTube channel. Watch for announcements about our fall series when our Innovator Speaker Series theme, starting in September, is The Illusion of Reality, where we'll be delving into the quantum physics and cognitive neuroscience of reality from a scientific perspective and learning that actually what we think is reality is not really reality at all. Each member of our podcast audience will be receiving an email that includes a brief survey. Please take a few minutes to fill it out. It helps us improve these podcasts for the future. In that email, there will be information about where you can find Kirby's documentary series, as well as the merchandise he has available, highlighting both Everything is a Remix and This is Not a Conspiracy Theory. So thank you and goodbye.